When Daniel Carter was born, the hospital lights flickered, not because of some poetic sign of a great destiny, not because of a dramatic entrance into the world, but because the building was old, underfunded, and barely holding itself together, just like the neighborhood Daniel was born into on the south side of Cleveland, Ohio. His mother was just 18. His father, he left before Daniel ever learned to speak his name. The first home Daniel remembers wasn't really a home at all. It was a small, cold apartment with cracked walls, a heater that only worked when it felt like it, and a single mattress on the floor that he shared with his mom. Some nights, dinner was canned soup. Some nights, it was nothing at all. And then there were the nights his mom would say, "Oh, I already ate at work," even though Daniel could hear her stomach growling loud and clear as she tucked him into bed. He was young, but he knew. Always knew. Growing up, school was where Daniel learned a hard lesson early on. Poverty makes you invisible. Other kids would show up in shiny new sneakers. Daniel wore hand-me-downs with soles that were coming loose, flapping with every step. Other kids talked about family vacations and trips to the beach. Daniel talked about the importance of staying quiet so the landlord wouldn't notice them and kick them out. His teachers wrote on his report cards that he was quiet but capable. But what they didn't see was that Daniel wasn't just quiet, he was careful. He was careful not to ask for too much, careful not to complain, careful not to dream too loudly, in case someone overheard and told him he couldn't. By the time he was just 10 years old, Daniel had already figured out something that most adults spend their whole lives trying to understand. Life doesn't care how hard you try. It only reacts to what you do. The first major turning point came when Daniel was 13. His mother collapsed at her job. The diagnosis was simple: exhaustion, dehydration, stress. The doctor said she needed to rest. But as Daniel looked at the growing hospital bill, a terrifying realization washed over him. Rest was a luxury they simply couldn't afford. So Daniel started working. After school, he was sweeping floors at a local grocery store, the smell of sawdust and stale bread filling his nose. On weekends, he was up before the sun, delivering newspapers at 5 a.m., whether it was pouring rain or freezing snow. One cold morning, while folding papers on a frosty porch, a headline caught his eye. Self-made millionaire shares his story. Daniel didn't really know what a self-made millionaire was, but those words self-made stuck with him. They burrowed into his mind. That night, he went to the public library and used one of their slow, clunky computers to search for stories of other people who had started with nothing. He read about entrepreneurs, inventors, and leaders who came from backgrounds just like his. And for the very first time in his life, Daniel felt something dangerous, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before. He felt hope. But hope, as he quickly learned, doesn't make things easier. It just makes the stakes higher. After high school, Daniel applied to college. He was rejected. He applied again the next year. Rejected again. He ended up working full-time at a massive warehouse, lifting heavy boxers for 10 hours a day. His back constantly ached. His hands were raw, cracked, and sometimes they would bleed. At night, while his body screamed for rest, his mind was wide awake. He would read business books he'd borrowed for free from the library, devouring every page. He tried to apply what he was learning, starting a small online resale business. It failed spectacularly. He tried again with a different idea. It failed again. His friends started to laugh. They told him to be realistic. One of them, a guy he'd known since childhood, pulled him aside and said, "Man, you gotta understand, people like us don't get rich." That single sentence burned into Daniel's chest like a brand. People like us. Then came rock bottom. At 24 years old, Daniel lost his warehouse job. Automation had arrived, and a machine could now do the work of half the staff, including him. With no money, no backup plan, and no safety net to catch him, he ended up sleeping in his beat-up car. He spent 3 weeks living out of that car, parking in dimly lit lots, feeling more invisible than ever. One night, sitting in a Walmart parking lot under the hum of the fluorescent lights, Daniel stared at his own reflection in the rearview mirror. He looked tired, he looked defeated, and he whispered to himself, "If this is the bottom, then the only direction left is up." He made a decision that night. It wasn't a sudden burst of motivation. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-like vow. It was a quiet, disciplined one. He decided he was done waiting for life to give him a chance. he was going to take one. That was the beginning of the long climb. Daniel dedicated himself to learning. He used free resources, online YouTube tutorials, library courses, free articles, to teach himself digital skills. He learned about marketing, about sales, about web design, anything that could give him an edge. He started taking on freelance work, seeking out the clients nobody else wanted. The jobs were small. The pay was low. But Daniel's rule was simple. Charge low prices, but deliver high quality, and never, ever miss a deadline. His reputation began to grow, slowly but surely. While other people were sleeping, Daniel was learning. While others were complaining about their circumstances, Daniel was building his skills. The years passed. They were slow years, quiet years, filled with small, incremental progress that no one else could see. Then, one day, a client referred him to another, and that client referred him to another. The momentum started to build. Daniel took a leap of faith and started his own small digital agency. At first it was just him, working out of a tiny corner of a shared office space. Then he hired one person, then two, then 10. Money started coming in. It wasn't a lottery win. It wasn't a floodgate opening. It was a steady, reliable stream that grew stronger each month. The moment everything changed came when Daniel was 34 years old. A larger firm made an offer to buy his company. When he saw the number on the contract, it didn't feel real. It was a 7-figure number. He signed the papers, his hand shaking not from fear this time, but from sheer disbelief. After the meeting, he sat in his car, the same way he had all those years ago. He just sat there, letting it all sink in. Then he started driving. He didn't go to a fancy restaurant or a dealership. He drove straight back to the same neighborhood he grew up in. He parked on the same street, looked at the same cracked sidewalks, and the same old, tired buildings. And he just cried. He wasn't crying because he had escaped. He was crying because he remembered every single step it took to get there. Today, Daniel Carter is a wealthy man, but his definition of wealth has nothing to do with the number in his bank account. The first thing he did was pay off all of his mother's debts and buy her a house where the heater always works. He now funds scholarships for kids from low-income neighborhoods, the kids who feel invisible, just like he did. And when he hires people for his new ventures, he intentionally looks for the ones that other companies overlook, the ones with potential that isn't listed on a resume. When people ask him for his secret, oh, indeed it. He never just says, hard work. Everyone works hard. Instead, he says, I stayed when quitting felt smarter. I learned when resting felt easier, and I believed when nothing around me made any sense. Daniel's story isn't really about getting rich. It's a story about refusing to let your starting point define your ending, because being born poor isn't a personal failure, but staying stuck in a mindset of defeat, that is a choice. And I know that somewhere right now, someone listening to this story is sitting in silence, feeling invisible, wondering if it's too late for them. It's not. It never was. Thanks for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more content just like this. We'll see you in the next one.